Hey everybody, I just wanted to let you know that we teamed up with Senpai GG to bring you a complete breakdown of all the new mythic items and when to build them. Come check it out on their YouTube channel. The link is in the description box below. Hey everybody, it's Lohpally here with another video, and today we're going to be going over the top picks and our tier list for 1025 that's coming out on Wednesday the 9th. So, for those who haven't really read too much about the patch notes, the most important thing to note in this patch is the upcoming changes to support items, where all of the support items are having some of their stats adjusted. In compensation for that, though, they're having their gold requirements reduced by 200, making it significantly cheaper for you to get that first item and power spike on your support item as soon as possible. This is a general overall buff for pretty much all supports. Main thing to note too, though, is that Mandate is having their power shifted. As of currently right now, Mandate does 60 damage and has a proc of 60 damage too, so it's a 50-50 split. But in the next patch, it will be split where it's 25-75. This makes Mandate significantly nerfed for anyone who is using it basically as a solo DPS item. Sorry about that. The reason why this is a good change, by the way, is because you don't want solo laners taking your item and using it and abusing it, because that just means Mandate will already be something that's on the chopping block for other people. So without further ado, let's jump into our tier list. The way I want to outline this is mostly as follows. Anything that's S plus or S tier, you can pretty much play all the time into pretty much anything. They have versatile strategies and styles, and they utilize the support items extremely well. Some of them are really strong also because of their versatility or counters to the meta currently being played. A are exceptionally strong, but maybe a bit more situational, and you might need to have some skill backing it up, whereas the S and S pluses are relatively easy to pick up for the most part and have clear powers that make them stronger and more of a standout than any of their characters. B are champions that you can play, but I wouldn't recommend in most situations unless you're a main of this champion and you really like playing them. They're still not bad, but I wouldn't recommend them, and they usually do pretty poorly against especially the S's and S pluses. C is basically you're wasting your time in DNF or just kind of trolling at this point in time and are incredibly weak and useless. So, let's jump into the S plus tiers, which has got 3 on the line. So we're going to have Lulu, Nami, and Bard. Lulu comes in as one of the best supports just because of the fact that she's incredibly easy to use. I think most people build her incorrectly, though. I've seen a lot of moonstones and mandates on it. I feel like for the most part this is pretty bad and griefing in most standpoints. If you build yourself a locket, the champion is relatively short range, so it's very easy for her to get focused, and you don't want to use cooldowns to protect yourself like Lulu or Lulu Shield. You want to be using that on someone else to enable them. So if you start going locket, this champion is incredibly powerful and easy to play. There's not really any skill shots, and she pairs well with a lot of different archetypes of champions, engage and disengage. She also does really well since a lot of people are picking a decent amount of assassins, and she does really good into all those matchups. Because of the fact that she's easy to play, utilizes locket pretty damn well, and in the future, as AD carries get buffed and, you know, crit items are getting more and more powerful, she'll have more pairings that work well with her. Next is Nami. It seems like they're keeping the interaction of Mandate and E, which is when you use your E on somebody, it empowers them and they proc a slow, which then procs Mandate and gives you damage. So Nami's one of the champions that doesn't really receive any nerfs in the Mandate nerfs, moving the power, because you're always having a teammate that's proccing it for you for the most part anyway. On top of this, always having sustain is incredibly useful for laning phases. It allows you to get through most laning phases quite well, and she actually pairs really well with both on-hit AD carries and all of the Eclipse builders like Jin and MF. Because of this and her functionality in team fights where she has a lot of crowd control and a high skill ceiling, she actually can 1v9 a lot of games if you play her exceptionally well. She also, I feel like for the most part, has the most flexibility when it comes to items. So I've built games where I built Moonstone on her, Locket, and Mandate. They're all situationally pretty good. If you're not really sure what to build, Mandate's definitely still the best for her for the most part. After that, moving into Bard, kind of the same category as Nami in the sense that he can use basically any of the support items that he wants. Mandate is still relatively good, but we've lost some damage on that, so that is something to consider. Moonstone and Locket are both good on him too, and you can probably build an assortment of other support items, as Bard has always used pretty much every item, just whatever you want. Because of the fact that the game is pretty fast-paced and there's a lot less EXP in bottom lane, being able to roam and give your AD carry solo EXP and affect the solo lanes in the early stages is always a potent and powerful ability, and Bard does this the greatest. So moving into our S, which makes them not quite the S+, are these new champions, which are Leona, Yuumi, Janna, and Seraphine. All these champions are exceptionally strong, but have clear weaknesses and problems in it, and that's why they come in at S instead of S+. Leona is basically the premier tank, as she has a lot of engage and tons of damage in the laning phase, and she spikes pretty much at levels 1 through 6 very, very easily. On top of that, she utilizes all the tank items very well because her W gets scaling off of bonus armor and MR. Usually you're going to be building Locket on her, but things like Chem Tank are not bad either, and she has a lot of flexibility when it comes to her second tank items. I like her a lot, and she's pretty much the best tank support to be playing right now if you like being an engager. Obviously, the biggest problem with her is that if the enemy has cleanse or if there's not a lot of follow-up, you might run into some problems, but in general, she does really, really well in this current meta. After that, we're moving into Yuumi, and Yuumi is super good because Moonstone costs way less, and she has a really easy way of proccing Moonstone and utilizing it and powering up all of her teammates. Since jungle is also exceptionally strong and a lot of healing bruiser-like champions are super good, even if AD carry isn't the greatest role, there's usually a Hecarim or a Camille that you can grab onto and heal them up, and they can usually 1v9 carry. Biggest problem with Yuumi, obviously, has always been Yuumi's problem, which is that you don't move, so you're a little bit reliant on the impact of your teammates to actually power them up. So you're a force amplifier, you're not really a 1v9 carry. Next, moving into is Janna. I like Janna actually a lot because of the fact that she can actually move around the map a lot too. She's the roaming enchanter that everyone has always been talking about. You can go Swifties early on her and move around the map, go Comet, put a couple points in W, and you can actually impact the map and gank quite frequently. I like that, and the fact that if you have a lot of movement speed, it's a lot easier for you to navigate and dodge skill shots. So she actually has a really, really insanely high skill ceiling, and that makes her an S, but, you know, you kind of have to have a little bit of a groove on her to actually play a lot of her champion's skill sets right. So disrupting people's dashes with your tornadoes and ultis is a must, and I would say that she feels like she doesn't scale the greatest into late game. So the longer the game goes, she doesn't feel insanely powerful, just alright. I also like her because of the fact that Mandate, Moonstone, and Locket are all reasonable buys on her. I think most people like Mandate, and that's still pretty reasonable, but thing to note is Mandate's damage is being lowered, so if you are moving around the map and harassing people, you will need your teammate to help you proc that. Next moving into is going to be Seraphine, which is the teamfight god. Yes. This champion is exceptionally bad in laning phases. Most of her skill shots are incredibly broadcasted, and she has incredibly low mobility and also low armor, so she's really easy to kill and all in. You can get her through laning phase, though. Her ulti basically catches everyone off guard, so if you have anyone who can engage off of you and you ulti off of them, you can carry fights exceptionally well. Most of the time I build Guardian and Locket because of this, since there's a lot of assassins, and she just doesn't have a lot of durability. On top of that, you don't really need anything outside of your core fundamentals of the spells just to CC people, as damage, although is nice, it's not necessary on this champion. Biggest problem, obviously, is the laning phase. So, jumping into the A tiers, which are going to be Galio, Karma, Zilean, and Rakan. As I've stated before, I feel like a lot of people are still playing a lot of assassins, and even more tank nerfs are actually coming in. So that is a thing to note that is occurring right now in the grand scheme of things, in the grand landscape of the game. Much like Leona, I really am a fan of Galio, and he comes in at number 2 on my tank list. And the reason why he doesn't come in as number 1 is his damage is a little bit lower than Leona's, and his relatively tankiness goes down a lot relative to Leona also. His scaling isn't nearly as good, but he comes with a lot of tools to both peel and engage. So if you ever have anyone on your team like a Camille, Jarvan, etc. that can go in, you have Galio Ultimate to go in. I also like Galio actually because of the fact that he is fun to play as a peel support. He actually has a lot of disengage and good ways to stop people from killing your AD carry or backline. On top of that, it's actually pretty common for us to see a lot of magic damage on 1 or 2 champions, things like Evelynn, Diana, etc. that want to dive the backline, and I find that the Galio shield is actually incredibly powerful against all of these champions. I'm a big fan of Galio, and I actually prefer playing him over Leona, but he's not quite as strong as Leona since his damage and lockdowns are relatively lower, and he doesn't have nearly as many combos with his flash. Next, moving into is Karma. Now, Karma is really good because of the fact that her Q, normally without Mantra, actually slows, which makes Mandate a powerful item on this champion. On top of that, you can build Lock-in and Moonstone once again on this champion, depending on your flexibility requirements. Also, another thing to note too is Akali is actually incredibly popular and you're clearly banned nearly as much as she needs to be, and your Mantra W or your W in general reveals stealth champions, so she actually counters a decent amount of the champions that want to stealth in and try to kill people, so I actually really like her whenever people pick Akali, which is actually pretty common in a lot of games. She also has a decent laning phase where she can harass a lot and get a lot of control in the early game, and she's not very dependent on items. The reason why I like her a lot more too is since the Mantra changed so that she gains a lot more Mantra cooldown whenever she's hitting people with her Qs or casting spells or auto-attacking, means that you basically have Mantra up for every shield, which makes her late game scaling substantially better than she used to be. Next, moving into is going to be Zilean. Zilean's actually just really, really well because of the fact that he just does well against assassins. And EXP, as we've stated before, is relatively starved in the bottom lane, so being able to basically forcibly give EXP to you and your AD carry is a very valuable attribute to have. Main problem with this champion is he can be relatively weak into some matchups where they are long ranged and harass you, but if you can get through that stage and you counter some of the all-in champions, you can do really, really well in team fights. Same thing kind of with Rakan, where his laning phase is kind of on the weaker end of things, but does exceptionally well with REing to his teammate and kiting backwards and shielding his teammates. I think for the most part I've fallen in love with Lock-it on this champion, but you can build Mandate and Moonstone. They're just not as great on him. So as you can see now, we've got kind of like a big smorgasbord of bees. These are all champions that you could play. They're not the greatest. They're not the worst. You can make them work in some circumstances. I don't want to tackle them too much, but for the most part, like, these are just champions that still aren't terrible and a waste of time to play. But in most cases, I've stayed away from them for the most part unless I'm playing for fun or I really want to try to 1v9 a game. I think it's really hard right now, by the way, for supports to play AP carries and carry games because of the fact that you have limited gold income and all the items cost an insane amount of gold. Because of this problem, champions like Lux, Brand, Zyra, Annie, Swain, Spellcause, etc. You kind of see all these carry champions go into my B category just because of the fact that you need just an insane amount of kills in order to carry a game, and it's really hard to play these champions and operate them whenever there's a fed solo laner in the game because they usually just one-shot you in without any remorse. Another thing too is some of the like purist healing champions like Soraka, Sona, etc. that need a lot of protection and don't have a lot of tools to keep themselves alive. They do well against like full poke teams, but if there's a lot of diving champions, these champions can't really peel for themselves and they kind of die instantly. The only two that I really want to talk about for the most part are Nautilus and Morgana. I still think Nautilus can be okay if you snowball the laning phase and get a lot of kills, but the second you start falling behind, the champion can suck. So if you're playing with something that can dive off of your ulti, then it can do somewhat well as like a third backup tank, but I'm not as crazy about him as I like Leona and Galio for that case. Also, I think Morgana actually can be exceptionally strong when she's a counter pick, but in general, I've mostly based my tier list off of being able to blind pick these champions, pick them up easily, and play them exceptionally well. Because that, Morgana actually has a pretty huge barrier of entry because Black Shield timing is actually kind of hard. Plus, most of her laning phase is completely predicated on you hitting bindings. So, there's a lot of exceptional things that need to happen for this champion to be good, but it can be better as we move up and down the skill level of players. And then after that, we kind of just have a lot of tanks that either don't do enough damage or harass bots that kind of got nerfed with the mandate nerfs also. So I'm not a fan of any of these champions for the most part, and I pretty much would never pick them unless I'm just playing for fun and kind of like target griefing somebody. Anyway, guys, hope you guys found this video enjoyable. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment in the section below, and hit that bell and whistle. I'll see you next time. Peace.